is what this session is all about. How do you solve those complex selling processes with your ERP solutions? And so with none other than the expert on that themselves, which is Gwyn from Explologic. So over to you, Gwyn.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Gwyn Golden. I'm a sales director here at Explologic. Been with the company for 14 years. And today is the first day I had to put on a sweater. Turned a little cold today here in Denver. But what we're going to be going through is I'll just give you a brief background of Explologic, who we are. What is CPQ? So we'll talk a little bit about that, some benefits that you're going to get from CPQ, some customer success, and then I'm going to dive into a couple demonstrations to give you a feel for how it works within Business Central. And then certainly we'll end with some Q&A and where you can get some more information. So with that, just Explologic, CPQ, we've been a partner of Microsoft since 2005, and we are considered a Microsoft preferred solution, meaning that we really have passed all the rigorous tests and got the certifications of a integrated solution to Business Central. So on the supported integrations, we are focusing on Business Central today. Want to let you know, because some people also have D365 on the sales side or customer engagement. We do have an integration with that. We also support finance and operations. We support commerce solutions, D365 specifically, but we can also integrate with other commerce solutions. So if you're using a commerce solution and Business Central as an example, we can support that, as well as different portals. So if you want to extend your selling cycles out to a reseller environment or for customer self-service and that type of focus, those are the integrations that we do offer. And like I said, today we are going to be focusing on the integration with Business Central. So for those of you right off the bat just wondering, well, what is CPQ? CPQ stands for Configure, Price, and Quote. And really what we're talking about here is companies that have complex products or services. They need the ability to configure all of the pieces that are going to come together to determine how you're going to price it. So, and then of course you want to present a really nice looking quote to your customer. So with that, the configure, price, quote, that's what we're going to be handling. And, you know, really when I start thinking about CPQ, I often get asked this question, well, how do I determine if CPQ is a good solution for me? And I usually ask a couple questions. You know, number one, are you selling a product? And if you're selling it, you know, something more than just a widget where you're going in and buying something, that might be a good consideration for CPQ. But we also have a lot of service companies using us. So when you think about configuring a service, that there's a lot of different things that have to be taken into consideration to provide a monthly fee or, you know, a flat fee that you're going to be charging. CPQ is a really good fit for service companies as well. Some other things to think about, though, is how long does it take to create a quote? So when I look at this picture, you know, if you've got a lot of people that are having to get involved in the quoting process, and this guy in the middle is saying, wait a minute, this is getting too complex, we need to get Bob involved. This is a really good idea to bring in a CPQ. So you want to be able to make sure that you're producing these quotes rapidly. I know in the past when I've asked for quotes for things, if it takes too long from a vendor, I'm kind of moving on. You know, consumers are impatient. We want our quotes fast. The other thing to think about in your organization is it difficult to train new salespeople to provide quotes? So if your onboarding process takes several months because your products or services are so complicated, then CPQ might be the right solution for you. Because once a CPQ solution is put in place, then new salespeople should easily be able to produce a quote without much training. Another thing I always ask companies, how often are your salespeople making mistakes? So are they forgetting to add some things? Did they not get trained well enough so they didn't know, oh gosh, when I sell this product in California, I'm supposed to be adding in some other components that are, you know, specific to California. How often are we missing out on additional revenues where sales reps aren't trained well enough to do some upselling, you know, cross-selling? So think about how often your salespeople are making mistakes. Another consideration is, do rules dictate how you sell? So as I mentioned, if you're selling in a different region, maybe there's different components that have to be involved. Or when somebody adds a specific component to a product or service, should it automatically remove other components, or should it automatically add some other components? So the rules aspect is really a huge time saver for implementing a CPQ. Another thing to think about is, are multiple variables used to determine how you price your offerings? So again, we're not talking about the I sell a widget for $100. We're talking about companies that, based on materials that are selected. If you're selling, let's say, furniture, and you've got different materials to select and different configurations of that piece of furniture, and are they going to upgrade it to a higher end leather, that type of thing. Any type of any type of variable that will affect not only the price, but it's also going to affect maybe the cost, which of course would then affect the profitability. It's also going to affect potentially a bill of material if you are a manufacturer. But again, if we're talking about services, depending on how you're providing that service, the price could fluctuate. So I'll be showing actually two examples today, one of a manufacturing and one of a service. The last thing that I like to take into consideration is, if you are selling a product, would your customers buy faster if they could visualize it? So I can speak from personal experience. I just recently bought some new furniture, and the company that I bought it from really sat me down and was able to visualize in my room what that furniture would look like, and be able to configure it and pick the different colors and the different shapes and sizes and so forth to make sure that it fit into my room. And because of that experience that I had and the professional quote that they provided to me, that was the vendor that I went with. So when you do think of, how are consumers buying from you, if visualization is key, that is something that a CPQ can offer for you as well. So as I go through the demonstration, I will be talking about these aspects, some of the benefits based on the previous slides. Certainly, we want to get those quotes out quickly, so speed is really, really important. As I mentioned, the visualization, seeing your product come to life. We've got guided selling. So I'm going to talk about guided selling, which again, if we go back to talking about onboarding a new salesperson, if you can guide a sales rep through product or service selection, they're going to do it right, and they're going to be able to quickly do it without, no mistakes. If we're not having mistakes, so we're going to increase our profit margins. You can also increase those profit margins by having that upsell or cross-sell. So messaging that reminds the sales rep to ask certain questions. And then, we do have that full integration with D365. So why is that important? Well, now you're going to be able to do all of your native reporting out of the host system, which is Business Central. So you're not going to be utilizing a CPQ that's external. It is completely embedded in D365, utilizing the standard quote functions and inventory items and so forth. Okay. Lastly, we do handle the complex. So whatever complex rules or formulas or logic that you have that determines how you sell your product is what we handle very nicely. So for the manufacturing people on the call, you're going to see it going from sales all the way to the bill of materials. So industries that typically benefit from a CPQ can be all over the board. And that's why I kind of mentioned, the very first consideration, do you sell a product or a service? If you do, how configurable are they? And when you're looking at all of these different industries, whether it be a company that does clothing, apparel, or they're doing doors and windows, furniture, hardware and software companies, media, entertainment, pretty much all over the board of what you're looking for different industries that need a CPQ. Now, thought that I'd just pull up a couple logos. All of these customers that you're seeing here are using Explogix within Microsoft Dynamics today. Couple that I'll point out, maybe you've never recognized the name Gilbarco Veeder-Root. Well, next time you go to a gas station, look at the manufacturer of the gas pump, and you may see this logo on there. So they do a lot of the gas pumps throughout the US. Sub-Zero and Wolf products, Zippo lighters. Maybe you've heard of Ricoh for copiers and printers, or Lexmark printers. I'm actually going to be showing an example of Kenworth and Peterbilt trucks. So I know when I'm driving on the freeway, I constantly see Kenworth and Peterbilt trucks. Brings a smile to my face. And then we've got professional services, companies like Dryco that does paving, asphalt projects. Nelson Labs, which is a company that does lab testing on different substrates. HVAC companies. So all different types of use. And then we also scale very nicely. So whether you're a small company or you're enterprise size that you're selling in different countries and maybe selling in different currencies and languages and so forth, we do support that size company as well. Okay, so before we get into the demonstration, I'll just talk briefly about that whole, I like to think of it as an end-to-end process here. For those of you on the call that do have the D365 sales, you would use Explogix in the quote area of D365 sales. You might even use it in the opportunity, but if you're doing the lead to opportunity to quote, and then of course that quote gets pushed to a sales order in Business Central and then gets fulfilled and invoiced. What we're going to be focusing on today is more in the Business Central side. So instead of using the quoting in D365 sales, we're going to do the quote in Business Central, and then that quote is going to become an order, and then we'll go ahead and show the manufacturing side to finish that off. So let's go ahead and see it in action. I know people are going to be holding their questions to the end, so we'll go ahead and open up my demo environment here. And as mentioned, what we're going to do is going to take you through a couple examples to give you the feel of how it works within Business Central. If you don't do quoting, you can always start it from a sales order. So we do have a direct integration with sales orders as well, but I'm going to take you through the process of starting it from a quote. So what we've got here is a Business Central quote. We're going to go ahead and select a customer that we're working with. Once we've selected that customer, you'll notice at the top here, we've got a couple menu selections for Explogix. Configure, I'll talk about the quick view and bomb view, and we'll talk about production orders and the recalculate button. Let's just go ahead and click on the configure button. Well, what this is doing is this is loading up Explogix now. I will tell you the first time I'm loading it up, I've got 3 different demo environments that it's, or demos that it's loading up. So it'll take a moment the first time. But what we're going to do here is we're going to see the different products or services that we offer. So I'll give that just another moment. There we go. Okay, so you'll notice that I can configure a truck. Maybe I'm a company that configures trucks, but I can also sell things like speakers. And I also have a division that does some landscaping for you. So think of this as a way for, depending on what your sales rep sells, is what they're going to see. Okay, and this first example that I'm going to take you through is more of a guided selling approach. So you'll notice for a truck, we could either say, hey, I'm going to configure you a truck, or the customer maybe doesn't know what they need. I know I need a truck, but I don't know what kind of truck I need. As a sales rep, I don't even have to be very well versed in trucks. I could actually be guided through the process where I'm talking to the customer and say, okay, tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for. Do you think you need a truck or a tractor? And they say, oh, definitely I need a truck. So we're going to go ahead and choose a truck. Now notice down below, we're actually seeing all of the different trucks that we can offer to the customer. You can see details about it, whether it's good with fuel economy or not. You can see some, specific details about this truck, some horsepower and so forth. So the sales rep has everything that they need in front of them to be able to talk the customer through this. And now they might ask them, well, tell me a little bit more about this truck. How do you intend to use it? And they might, if refrigerated goods, general freight, we'll keep this one simple and say it's general freight. And you'll notice that a couple of the trucks disappeared automatically, and we'll continue to ask some more questions. Do you tend to drive it mostly in a flat terrain, or is it going to be, in Denver? So we'll go ahead and say it's going to be a flat terrain. And we expect to carry less than 10,000 pounds. Well, now you'll see that we're down to 3 trucks. So as a sales rep, whether I'm sitting right with the customer or I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm going to say, okay, well, based on what you've told me so far, these are the 3 trucks that I would recommend that you take a look at. And then, as mentioned, we can see additional details about it. We might ask them some more questions. Well, let's go ahead and say, hey, how about your cab configuration? And now we're down to 1 truck. Well, we may want to change something up above, and that's going to reconfigure to tell us what type of trucks are the best choice for the customer. So if you think about this, some people will use this guided selling just for new salespeople. As a new sales rep, I'm not as familiar with the trucks, so it might be nice for me to use this kind of to help the customer make a selection. I'm going to come back to the home page, and we'll look at a different scenario here where the customer has already called us up. They know pretty much what they want, but they want to configure it to their needs. And so now what we're going to do is choose this configure, and we can be presented with the different models that are available for the sales rep to sell. And so the 5,000 or the 5,500, and depending on the selection that you make, is only going to show you those specific options. So let's say that they are interested in this EX5000. So we'll go ahead and select that one. Now, right away, what Explogix has done is it's brought up all of the different categories here on the left-hand side of things that are configurable about this truck. At the bottom, we call this the status bar. This can list specific formulas or calculations that are important for the sales rep to see. So if they're focusing on what their commission is going to be for this truck, they can see profitability. Maybe we're going to be calculating weight and so forth. You can have links to additional information. So if we wanted to pop out to a marketing brochure so that we can see some details about this particular truck and, again, confidently talk about what we're proposing for the customer. See different things like some promotions that are going on. And as we go through, we could either, say, oh, I want to look at what transmissions we can offer for this particular truck. And you'll notice that there's some that are grayed out. They could be grayed out because they're not compatible with this truck. They could be grayed out because of some other prerequisites. Okay. And, whoops, we can go ahead and come back to the top here. As we start asking some questions now, this can guide the sales rep through the configuration process. So if one of the things that we ask them is what's important about this truck, the weight of it, the price, fuel economy, comfort, and they say, oh gosh, fuel economy is really important right now. So we'll go ahead and choose fuel economy. And what that's doing now is that's popping up a message. And it's saying, well, if fuel economy is important, we would recommend that you get a selection from the aerodynamic package. We also recommend that you get the Michelin tires. Now, this, of course, is an interactive messaging because if the customer says, no, I'm not interested in that, you can unmark it. But if they are interested in that, we'll just go ahead and click OK and continue on. So think of this messaging as a way for the sales rep to be reminded to ask questions. Again, it's good for upsells, which I'll talk about in a moment, but we'll go ahead and say that the customer thought that was a good idea. We'll go ahead and select that. And now we're ready to look at some other items. Now, before I do that, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about these buttons up here. You'll notice that there's a quick view and a bomb view button. And again, you can choose if you want to hide these or show these. The quick view is kind of nice because it says, based on the way that this truck is configured, you're going to get this base model, you're getting this engine, this transmission, this air compressor, et cetera. So those have been pre-selected. But as we make some selections, to change that, then our quick view will update. But what's also updating is the bill of material view. I'm going to talk briefly about this because really this is just at the quoting stage. What we're saying is if this quote turns into an order, this is the bill of material that Explogix is going to pass back to Business Central. Okay, and we're going to see how this bill of material is going to change as we make some configuration changes. Right now, all it has is a cab assembly with some doors and a windshield and a body and et cetera. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. So now let's go ahead and configure this a little bit further. Let's say that we're talking to the customer and they're asking us about this engine. And we say, yep, this one came with this engine that, is 1800, all of these different items associated with that, governed RPM speeds, peak torque rating. They go, oh, wait a minute, that peak torque rating isn't high enough for me. I'd like to look at what else you have to offer. And so we're going to go ahead and click on select a different engine. And now what this is doing is showing just the engines that are available for this particular model truck. We can see that there's 44 of them. And now we can start to do some searching where they might say, well, I'm really interested in some torque ratings that are greater than 1800. So I'll just hit my enter key. And then I'm also interested in governed RPMs greater than 500. Hit the enter key. And now we want to sort it by price. So we can see the cheapest to the most expensive, or maybe we want to sort it by something else. And now as we're talking to them, they say, oh, wow, you know what, this 13,000 one looks pretty good because it's got a good torque rating. Everything looks good. It's not too expensive. Let's go ahead and select that one. Once that's saved, though, what happens is this is telling us that there's an incompatibility. So the engine that was selected is not going to work with the transmission. Well, this is critical because if the sales rep did not know that, we could be selling something that's not going to work for the customer, or it's going to get to manufacturing and manufacturing is going to say, oh, those darn salespeople, they never know how to sell things right. Well, this is going to make sure we sell things right. And so now the sales rep is looking at this and they can say, okay, we're either going to have to select a different engine that's going to work with this transmission, or we're going to be presented with only the transmissions that are available. And as it turns out, these two are the only choices. And so once the sales rep makes a selection that resolves that, we can continue on. Now, this is nice too, because it's also letting them know, hey, guess what? You get we're having a promotion on the Eaton transmission, so you're getting 20% off. And we'll just go ahead and communicate that to the customer. They'll be happy. Okay. As we continue down, again, we could either use the categories over here, or we can go ahead and scroll through the different options. Let me point out a couple of things that are going to happen in this next example. Notice certainly you can do just things like I want to show the customer what it would look like in a different color. Maybe we want to see what it looks like at a different angle. So I can go ahead and kind of play around with that. If we're talking to them and we say, hey, are you interested in adding a sleeper onto this truck? So I'm going to show you a couple things that are going to happen because it happens fast. Notice under the sleeper category, we just have a sleeper. We can choose the 52-inch or the 76-inch. We also notice that the sleeper is not on this image right now. When we add a sleeper, a couple things will happen. I'll say it'll happen fast. It's going to add some more categories off to the left-hand side. You can kind of see them over here. It's popping up a message. So this is an upsell opportunity. Hey, if they're getting a sleeper, we should really be recommending that they get this bunk and a refrigerator. Okay, so I'm talking to them. They say, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and add that in. We can see that the picture is updated, so we can see what it looks like with the sleeper. And now all of these different options became available because if we don't have a sleeper, let's unmark that. We don't need to have those other options, and the picture updates immediately. Let's go ahead and add that in again and see how fast those rules fire. Okay. Now, if we wanted to offer them, yeah, let's go ahead and add in this back wall storage system. So we'll leave those simple. I'm not going to go through every single option. You'll notice that we can see a lot of details here. We can add in non-stock items. So if there were particular things that they wanted to add, you'll notice that we do have an upload feature. So if somebody had sent us a spreadsheet and we just want to upload those, we can do that, add in some warranty. And then we start getting down to the pricing summary area. And so I'm just going to talk briefly about this. Certainly, we have many customers that want to do discounting. I do talk about discounting. You can have discounts at a line item. You can have a discount for the entire quote. You can do a combination of both. Discounting can be done by dollar amount, by percentage. You can also do markups and markdowns. You can have discounts based on profitability, however you want. For this demo, we actually are just showing that you can do amount or percent. And you'll notice that as I start to make some selections, we're going to see the profitability is going to change and my commission is going to be affected as well. And it'll let me know if this is going to require some approval. So let's go ahead and do a percentage and we'll do a 10% discount. You can see it took a little bit of hit on the commission and profitability, but that's okay. I can go ahead and do that. I have that ability. I do even go up to 20%. Not getting really happy with my commission at this point. But if we get up to a level that this is now saying, wait a minute, that's gone above and beyond your threshold, you're going to have to get this approved. Now, what we can work with is, of course, Power Automate, which you've been hearing a little bit about that today, to be able to initiate a workflow that can maybe go to my sales manager, and then they would have to approve it and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and just change this back to my none, keep this one simple. And what we're going to do, take a look at that BOM view. You'll notice that now it's added in a sleeper assembly with some components that are needed. Again, this will just take into consideration if we were to push this quote to an order. So what we're going to do is go ahead and save this. And what this is going to do is take all of those details of everything that was selected for that configuration, populate it back into the sales quote for Business Central where we started from, updating, of course, all of the line items. So give that just a moment to refresh. Now you see that we've got some different line items. Well, let me talk about these line items for a second, because what we're doing is we're having the top line item is actually something we have to make. And these items here are just what I like to think of as additional components. So we wanted to show that you can do it both ways. I certainly could have had it saved back as one line item that just called it the, truck, and then have everything be in the bill of material, but we wanted to show it both ways. So as we go through, I'll kind of show you the components that we're going to have at the production order. But before we do that, let's say that we've been talking to the customer and they say, you know what, let's take a look at that truck again. And so I'm going to go back into the configuration. It says, okay, so I see that this truck has been configured. We see the price of it. Well, maybe they want to add another configuration. So maybe they're deciding between two different models. We could configure a different model. Or, maybe they want to compare some configurations. So I'm going to go ahead and do this duplicate feature. That way I just can't keep this the way that it was. And now we can kind of play around with the second one. And play around, I think of, often when customers are buying something, maybe they've got a budget in mind and they want to see a good, better, best option. What would be kind of within my budget, what's a little bit above my budget, what's lower than my budget. And that way we can just go ahead and play around with some things. So let's say that they go, well, let's select a different engine. Now you may recall that, a lot of the transmissions disappeared when we selected that engine. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we choose a different engine. Let's go ahead and choose like this one. Save it. Now you'll notice it's opened up some more transmissions, so we can go ahead and offer them a different transmission. Oops, it actually lets us know, hey, you're no longer getting that promotion. So it's just telling us it's going to remove that from this configuration. That's okay. We'll let the customer know that. And then let's come down to the sleeper area. And let's say that they were interested in the larger sleeper. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. And it's going to be smart enough to know that, hey, now that you've selected that, there's some other components that we're going to remove for you because those aren't applicable, and it actually grays out the ones that they can't have. Let's just add in, a sleeper window. Keep this one simple, hit save. And then what we're going to do is come back to the home page, which is going to give us the ability now, whenever you have multiple configurations, you'll have the ability to compare them side by side. This is a really nice feature to be able to either print a document that shows the customer certain configurations so that they can decide between the two. Okay, that's unusual. Okay, let's come back to this home page. And what we're going to do, not sure why that didn't save. Let's go ahead and click on the compare button, and you'd be able to see that from each category is going to show you whether that option displayed or not. Okay, and so it is a nice feature. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm going to go ahead and just very quickly do that again. That should have worked just fine. We'll save that. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Won't dwell on that. So let's go ahead and say that they've decided to stick with that first one. So we're going to go remove the configuration that they don't want. And then we'll just hit close, and then that's going to take us back into Business Central. So the next step typically would be that we're going to go ahead and convert this to an order. So I'm going to go ahead and just within Business Central, take this quote that we're working on and say make an order. So it's asking us, do we want to convert it to an order? Yes, I do. It's been converted. Do you want to open it? Yes, I do. Now, of course, we're getting some messages about some inventory levels, but we'll just ignore those for the moment. we've got the order, and now under our actions and expert logics, we're going to talk about this create production order. So if we're ready to produce this, we're going to go ahead and select our configurations. Now, if we had multiple trucks or multiple products, we'd be able to select all of the ones that we want to do. We're going to say create production order, and that's going to come back and say it successfully created production 10, 11, 12. So remember, easy number to remember. Let's go ahead and look at our production orders. And it's in our planned production orders. We'll go ahead and open that up. And it should be the very last one. Here's that 10, 11, 12. Let's go ahead and open that up. And you'll notice that what we've actually done is we are creating, here's that line item for the tractor model. It's got a sleeper assembly and a cab assembly. And if we click on that line item and come up to the line components, this is where we're going to see the components that I actually showed you. You may recall back in the BOM view button. So if we close this and now look at the cab assembly and look at the line components, we'll see the components that are associated with that. As well as if there were any, for this one, we didn't do any routing, but you would actually see some route steps, just got one work center, the paint work center. You would see any route steps that are associated with that too. So not only do we configure the components on a work order or production order, we're also going to do the route steps that are associated with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and back out of here for a moment. And what I want to do is come back, and we're going to very quickly show you a couple other functionality that you can do here. So I'm going to select Progressive Home Furnishings is our customer. We're going to go into Configure. And this time, instead of selecting the truck, I'm going to show you two other examples. So one is another manufacturing example, a little simpler than the truck, and then the other will be a professional services example. That to come up. Okay. We're going to configure a speaker system. And so we're going to choose a speaker. We're going to now choose, a specific model, the 81 or the 82. I'm going to choose the 81. Now, a couple things that I want to point out that are a little bit different than the truck demo that I showed you. Number one, you're going to notice that it's showing me reading some data directly from Business Central. Hey, you're working with Progressive Home Furnishings. This is their address. This happens to be a reseller of ours, so they're going to automatically get a 15% discount, and it's calculating that discount for us. And we can start to, ask some questions. This is a little bit more of a simple one, like I said, than the truck, but there's still some logic going on. You can see some items that are grayed out and still guide us through some items. I'm going to say that this is going to be a fixed install. It needs to be weather resistant, and it's going to be in a chlorine environment, let's just say. Okay. We can still see some product specifications. So if we wanted to pop out to a message like I showed you before, and we can start to pick some different details. It's going to be in black. If I'm going to choose that it's going to have an amplifier, you'll notice that the model number will automatically change for us to a TA instead of a TX. And as we select some different options here, you'll notice that the color is going to default from what color we selected. So if we say we want it to be white, then all of the other components are going to show white and so forth. Okay. Well, the biggest reason I wanted to show you this example is you'll notice over here on the right-hand side, we've got some document output options. So right from the configuration screen, if I wanted to print this and send it off to the customer, we can do a little bit of automation. So number one, I might say, no, you know what, this isn't really a formal quote. I'm not going to do a cover letter. I don't need to do any terms and conditions at this point. We'll go ahead and leave the payment terms as net 30, and I'm going to roll up all of the components that have been selected to one line item. Okay. And what we're going to do is just click on this report button, and I'm going to say quote. And what this is doing then is this is just showing exactly what we asked for. Progressive Home Furnishings, it's got one line item, the speaker itself, and the total price of that. It's actually showing the reseller's discount on there, what the total is, and that the terms are our net 30 days. Okay. And then we could print it from here, certainly, but you can also have it be automatically emailed, if you wanted to do that. Now, we have been talking to the customer, maybe we've made some changes to this, and now we want to send them a formal quote. So we're going to say, go ahead and include a cover letter, include our terms and conditions. We agreed to a net 45, and they want to see everything. They don't want to just see it rolled up into one line item. So we'll go ahead and generate that report. And now we've got our cover letter that's looking at Progressive Home Furnishings. Scott is our main contact there. Thank you, for talking to us. I've got my name here with my title. We've got the top line item with the different components that were selected, the totals. We can see that it's a net 45 days, and we've got the terms and conditions. Now, certainly what you can also do with this is the terms and conditions can change based on the different products or offerings that we have. So that's one of the unique things when we're talking about, I focused a lot on C of the CPQ, the configuration. We have pricing that's being changed and updated based on the different options or configurations that we're doing. And now we've got this really nice looking professional quote that we're going to provide to the customer, and a lot more automation that we can do with the quoting. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that I showed you that. And then let's go ahead, save and close. I'm going to just hit the home page. So we'll let that update, and then we'll go back in. Now, I should mention about the document output options as well. You notice that I had some check boxes that we could do. Yeah, you can have drop downs. You could also have inputs. You can have some interaction where you're letting the sales rep input some information. Now, this saved it back just as the one line item. And certainly we do have a bill of material that's associated to this particular configuration. Okay. We'll go back into configure. And I'm going to come into more of a professional services example, just to show for the people that are on the call that don't sell a product, but you do sell a service. You can have it set up in a similar fashion. So then I'm going to show you a company that does landscaping, or, they could just even do mowing or some yard work for you. And you'll notice that it comes up as a very, very simple input. So it's first asking us some information like, what are we doing? Is it an athletic field? Is it a park? Is it an industrial? Is it, a residential? Is it a church, cemetery? I'm going to go ahead and choose just the default that it came up to. Where are we doing this job? California, Florida, or Texas? Now you're going to notice that as we select some of these things, some of our selections here will change. So California has north and south. And then once we choose north, it's going to show us the different areas in Northern California. If we choose south, then it's going to have Southern California. If we choose, let's say, Florida, then Florida has north, northwest, and south. And then, of course, the different branches associated to that. So let's say Lake Buena. Now it's coming up with some margin information. We can kind of play around with this. So if we wanted to see what, the price is going to be, if I mark it up or mark it down, we can have some burden rates that we're putting on here. We can see cost information. And by the way, you can actually hide this information based on who is logged in and who is doing this quote. So maybe Gwen is allowed to see it, but, Mary is not. Okay. As we come in here, you'll notice that I've got some different categories here, like we saw with the truck demo, but we're also presenting it in more of a tab structure. So we do have some customers that turn off the category bar and prefer just to have tabs. So you can do that. As I select some items here, we like to have this type of window. So if I have a lot of different sections, like I did with the engine, I want to pick them, I can do that. Let's just say we're going to choose a mowing job for this particular thing. So this is going to come up, okay, how many square feet is this job going to be? It just defaulted to 10,000. I can update that, say it's going to be 7,000. Once we've done that, then it says, okay, what type of grass is it? Now this grass is also related to where we're doing it. So right now for Florida, Florida has different grass than California. So if I come into California and choose an area, and now they've got, different types of grass that we're going to be mowing. And that could affect, the different type of mower that we need to use based on the type of grass, or, we might be asking, is this going to be a push mower or is it going to be a rider that we're going to be using? We can start to have some, is this an easy job, a medium job, a difficult job, whatever details that you want to have that are going to help be able to price that out. So this is now showing us an hourly rate with that burden, some adjustments that we can do. And then we can go and start adding some other components. Do we need to do some edging? Do they have any ponds or slopes that we need to be aware of? And anything that we're selecting, if I say, yep, we're going to have to do some edging. Once again, we've got some linear feet that we're doing, difficulty level. Now this is showing production rate and overhead and et cetera. We'll do some pond and slopes, retaining pond they have. Got that detail. If we needed to do some blowing, we're going to do some blowing, et cetera. Okay, so we don't need to go through every single one of these items. Now, if you wanted this could be setting up more of a project rather than when you think of a bill of material. So we can actually set up, I actually exposed this where you might have certain tasks that are involved with the different projects that could be set up. Okay, that is something that we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and close that particular one. And just to recap, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions here. But one of the key features about Explogix, by enabling us to launch it directly out of the existing sales quotes, you're not having to have data stored in a separate area. All of the data is going to be living and breathing in Business Central. So now that you'll be able to have that ability to do your pipeline reporting and so forth based on the different quotes that you have out there. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. And then just to kind of recap here, if you wanted to learn some more, you can always go out to explogix.com resources. In that area, we have different blogs that you can read, data sheets on the different product offerings. We do have customer success stories out there, videos that you can watch, whether they be customer success videos or videos of the product itself. If you wanted to have a one-on-one demo, where maybe this has enticed you, but you're thinking, well, how would it work for my specific situation? We could certainly get on a call with you, learn a little bit more about your business, and then either show you a more relevant demo or possibly even build a demo for you so that you can see your products. So those were the key areas that I wanted to cover, but I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions.
Thank you very much, Gwyn. There are many questions, as you can see in the chat. So let's begin at the top. Okay, sure. So the first question is by Tony, who's asking, working with Explogix with CE for a while, love to see how it works with BC. And Peter Taylor is asking, what versions of BC is Explogix available for, please?
Oh, which versions? Great question. I don't have that information right in front of me, so I'll have to look up those version numbers and I can post that after.
Fantastic. And if you could share your contact details in the chat, Gwyn, I think that would be helpful for the attendees as well. That'd be great. Okay, so Johnson is asking, is this available for Business Central SaaS?
Business Central, what was the last part?
SaaS, so basically the cloud version. Business, yeah.
Yep, yep, this is, yes, we do support both the on-prem and online version of BC.
Fantastic. So Mark Alston is asking, if we're using both D365 and Business Central, would you recommend managing items, pricing in Business Central and pushing data to Dynamics 365 CE via the standard Dataverse CRM connector?
So that is typically the way that most people do it. Yes, you would want your data master to be in Business Central, and then using the Dataverse, as you said, push it to CE, and then we would just pick it up from there.
Fantastic.
That's correct.
So Matthew Perrin is mentioning, my rule of thumb when doing an integrated implementation would be to keep all of your financials in Business Central as the master record, but that's correct, as you rightly mentioned. So Mark Alston is mentioning, for info, we are planning on connecting Explogix to our D365 to allow quotes to be created there by our sales team. So Peter Taylor is mentioning, can he's asking a question here now. Can Expertlogics be configured to create separate production orders for different manufactured items as opposed to one production order with 3 line items on it?
Yes, you can do that. You can have separate production orders instead of just one with all of the components on it. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so Lokin is asking, is there any solution regarding edit or fill timesheets through mobile phone?
I'm trying to think how that would relate. I would need a little bit more of a use case of why you would use that for CPQ. So Lokendra, if you can put a little bit more information about what you're looking for there.
Great. So Mark is saying thank you for your answer. Kirk is asking, does Expertlogics also work with LS Central?
I'm not familiar with what LS Central is.
So LS Central is an actual customized solution, ISV solution built on top of Dynamics Nav/Business Central. So Kirk, I would assume that if you've installed LS Central, you also have Business Central behind it, and if that's the case, then yes, the underlying data should work because the underlying database is Business Central.
Is Business Central correct?
Yeah. So Exotic City is asking, can we spare sales order like for Workhouse pick frozen and dry and invoice to one customer? Exotic City, could you rephrase that question? Sorry, I think you've I don't know if that makes sense to you. Sorry, Gwyn, that question.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Sorry, so if you could just repeat that question entirely, because it's not making much sense. If you could repeat that entirely, please, that'd be really helpful. So Kirk has responded LS Retail and Business Central. Rocco is mentioning, hi Kirk, we use LS Central. What industry are you in? So that's obviously some conversation between the attendees. So yes, so any other questions? We've still got a few more minutes left. Any other questions? I know there's lots of great questions. It's a great product for solving that problem when it comes to complexities in that sales process. And I think in relation to the mobile question, your solution it's a web-based I guess responsive solution, right, Gwyn? So it's going to work on mobile phones as well, right?
Correct. And I was going to kind of say that if the more of the question is about mobile, then yes, we do work on the mobile apps that you can have with Business Central, then it would work just fine.
So Kirk is saying customer is above ground pools. So sales are done through the POS in LS Retail. Okay.
Yes, we don't currently have an integration, I can tell you that, with the point of sale portion. But it might be possible that will be coming up in future releases, because we actually, our next release is going to enable us to have a better architecture for working with some of the products we never have before. So stay tuned, I guess, check back with us, but currently it does not have an integration.
So often, Gwyn, I mean, in a scenario that I'm working in, which is basically also related to scenarios like where you've got very bespoke situations like funeral care. When you've got retail scenarios where you want to empower the sales agents to have that experience that allows them to do their job efficiently, but they don't want to be clouded by the ERP system, whether it's Business Central, whether it's F&O. I mean, where does Expertlogics fit in? I mean, from a kind of like user licensing perspective, where you don't want to give your users full access to to the ERP. You just want them to do their job efficiently and effectively. Well, where does Expertlogics fit there?
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, most people would have the sales component, D365 sales or customer engagement. so that their sales reps don't have access to the ERP. They're launching it from more on the sales side. Or if they have if they want to extend it to more of a customer / internal salesperson portal, and that portal then could speak back to Business Central, that would be a good option for that too.
Fantastic. So Gabriel is asking, is MPOS a good option with BC, or LS Retail is the best? So I think now the conversation is all going around LS Retail now, and POS. So just sticking to the topic, which is obviously the CPQ process. Any final questions in relation to that? But some good questions in the chat. I think you've inspired a lot of conversation here, Gwyn, on the complexities on retail. Yeah, so it sounds like it's kind of instigate. Here we go. So Herky is asking, Ferreira is asking, have you done Explogic's implementation with Business Central on-prem?
Yes, we have. We had actually, that was our first integration, was with the on-premise version, and then we released it for online very shortly after.
Fantastic. Right. Okay. Fantastic. So if there are no other questions, what we'll do, here we go. There is. There is a question.
Yeah.
So Exotic City is asking, we take order from one customer which contains frozen and dry, and on warehouse pick, I want to separate the order. Should for warehouse employee like pick is different, but invoice is same? Again,
yeah. Well, I can.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you could certainly use the configurator to kind of separate those out. So I might want to go in and configure, adding in some frozen products, and then there's going to be some dry products. This would be a perfect example for when you might want to use the document output that I showed you. You could generate a pick ticket that would say, hey, pick ticket, we want dry on one pick ticket and the frozen on another pick ticket, but really it's all on the same quote and order, so it'll show up on the invoice all at once. I think that's what you're looking for, so that would be a really good example of when to use our document output, is to generate pick tickets. Great question. Yeah, I should have mentioned that our document output isn't restricted just to use it for quotes. You could also use it in other areas of Business Central, whether you're wanting to use the document output for invoices, for orders, for pick tickets, for whatever, aside from financials, of course. All right, fantastic.
Fun. Yeah, excellent. Well, once again, thank you, Gwyn, for a great presentation and education session as well. Hopefully we'll get to see you in person next year when we return back to in-person conferences. So great feedback from Lakendra as well. Hi, Gwyn, it was a great session. So thank you once again, Gwyn, for joining us today.
Awesome, thank you. And we are actually at a live conference in Orlando coming up here in October. So if anybody's going to a summit in Orlando, come look for me.
Excellent, excellent. Once again, thank you, Gwyn.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.